Fundamental question. The most important relationship that you have is to, say, your tribe. It's your identity, it's your protection, everything, right? And yet Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is not saying break off family relations.
Right.
But he's saying faith is more important than bloodline. That's what they're really trying to do. So how do you spin this? How do you pivot this?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this wasn't just a battle of beliefs, it was a war for narrative control. In this episode, we are behind the closed doors of al-Nadwah. The Quraysh elite are preparing for their Hajj season, anticipation every year, but not with worship, but with a media campaign. So they were preparing for the Hajj, for the arrival of the pilgrims, with a media campaign, a PR plan to discredit the Prophet ﷺ in front of the world, in front of the pilgrims that come to the Kaaba for the Hajj. The problem, none of their labels actually fit, and so they're kind of in a bind. My name is Sajjad. This is the Criterion Concepts Seerah podcast. As always, with us is Assad Koshul, founder of the podcast series and the curriculum and the lead facilitator. Assad, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Assad, can you maybe take us through the sort of key highlights for this scene, which is the Quraysh strategizing their Hajj PR campaign against the Prophet ﷺ?
Yes. So thanks again, Shahzad. So this is, al-Nadwah is having a brainstorming session and a strategy session. But this one is specifically very important because this is the first Hajj that has taken place after the Prophet ﷺ has declared his message publicly when he goes to the mountain, right? When he declares this publicly. So this is no longer a private call. Mm-hmm. And yeah, sure, people had heard about it, people knew about it, but now this was very out in the open. And this is the very first Hajj season. So now al-Nadwah is there, and Abu Abd Shams, who is the father of Khalid ibn Walid and Walid ibn Walid, he would be considered the intellectual of Qurayshi society, the one with the most advanced Arabic. And he was a very senior statesman. And he argues, he says, look, people are going to be coming to this Hajj, and this is going to be like any of the previous Hajj, that people have heard that Muhammad ﷺ has proclaimed prophethood and proclaimed a new religion publicly. And we have to keep in mind also the Prophet ﷺ was a merchant. So he has also traveled outside Mecca, the confines of Mecca.
Right.
So his reputation is just not confined to Mecca, his positive reputation. Not only because of him.
People know him elsewhere.
Yeah, because not only him, but his father and his grandfather's legacy. So Abd Shams argues, okay, we have to get aligned as a tribe because people are inevitably going to come and say, what is this about? And if we don't have a unified message, it's going to harm our position. Not only as guardians of the Kaaba, against our adversary, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is where this is the groundwork for this. So he says, we have to have a unified message.
And what were his proposals?
Yes, so the proposals were, so one, they said, okay, can we say that he is a soothsayer? And they said no, because one of his reputation, two, because what he does, he doesn't rhyme like a soothsayer. So that's one option. Then Abu Jahl said, well, can we say he's just crazy? He's majnoon, he's a madman.
Right.
And Abdul Shams says no, he doesn't have seizures or hallucinations. He's intelligible. You know, people have dealt with him before. They know he's intelligent. They know he's not crazy.
Right.
Then they say, well, can we just say that what he's doing is a new form of poetry? And he says, no, we know poetry. It's part of our oral tradition. And different poetry verses, different systems. And his words are not like that of a poet.
Right. So whatever he's saying, it doesn't fit the rhyme and the rhythm and the meter that we have.
Exactly. Then someone said, well, can we say that he's not really a prophet, but he's a magician? Like, you know, and they said, no. He said, we know what magicians do and how their tricks are. Nothing that Muhammad ﷺ does is like that of a magician.
Right.
So then they say, all of these four, Abd Shams says, all four of these are going to be recognized as false. Soothsayer, crazy, poet, or magician. And this is where, again, the chief antagonist, he says, well, what are we supposed to do? And then this where Abdul Shamsa says, what Muhammad says is beautiful. But we still have to convince people to reject it. And he says, then let's brand him. Let's argue that he is a sorcerer. And that he says these words that if you listen to, you have a fallout with father, brother, wife, and clan. So that is the position they take. So what they argue is, okay, in a society where the entire organizing principle, politically and socially, and to a large extent even economically, is based on bloodlines and blood lineage and tribal loyalty, what would make an otherwise intelligent person leave their tribe and join him? So try to make this idea of abandoning family incomprehensible. So don't even listen to him, because if you listen to him, the risk is the sorcery which he's practiced on some of ours, right?
It's gonna
It can be on you.
it's gonna affect you.
So they said, let's brand him as a sorcerer. So this is how they intend to have a unified message. And so he's not a soothsayer, he's not a magician. We're not going to say he's not Majnoon, he's not crazy. And what we're going to say is he's a sorcerer. And they're hoping that with this unified message that they can diminish Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam now that his call is public. Right?
And so, and I mean, the interesting thing here also is if we just think about the progression, right? Because we've had now several discussions, right? And so we're seeing the progression as well. Now they're solving for a different problem. In previous conversations, the problem was confined to Mecca.
Between the two mountains.
Right. You know, the problem was confined to Mecca as in it was the clans from amongst Quraysh talking and arguing with each other and trying to figure out, okay, we are all Arabs, we're Quraysh, there are other tribes as well, but how are we going to manage this here? And now the problem that they're confronted with is there's a whole bunch of people coming for Hajj, and you know this call is now public. So how are we now going to manage it? Right?
Exactly.
It's on a different level.
Exactly.
So they're going through all these labels. They kind of settle, I guess, on this final sorcery thing. Okay, but throughout this whole discussion, also, there's no discussion about theology. Right?
Yeah.
There's no discussion even about politics, technically, because the political conversation was about them. Now it's not about politics. It's just about their image, and it's about them being able to control and show everybody that the Kaaba is secure because we're in control. Even though this dude, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and his followers are saying what they're saying, no, we're in control. Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the problem that they're trying to solve for.
Yes, exactly. So their public relations and strategic plan is basically to position this as to say, is but playing to what? Tribal loyalties. What would make a normal person and go against his father or go against his brother?
Right.
That is the card that they're looking to play. They're trying to make the choice of accepting Islam incomprehensible to the Hajjis. That's how they're trying to position this.
I'm also looking at this and I'm thinking, because they have an audience now, and it's not confined to their own people.
Exactly.
So they actually have to now perform, and that's kind of like what the whole PR thing as well is the whole PR thing is as well, is that they are figuring out what their script is going to be, their talking points, because they have to perform, and they have to sort of perform their unity itself, right? I mean, they're not unified internally, but they're just trying to settle on what they can convince everybody else of, because nothing else is going to work.
Yeah, it's a high risk Hajj for them, the highest risk probably in a very long time, because people are coming, and they are going to inevitably ask this new message, what is this about? And so.
And they want to discredit the message.
And they want to discredit the
messenger
messenger right off the top, right? Why? Because they realize like we have to speak in one voice. We should have a unified message, so we don't trip over ourselves. So hopefully people come, and they bring their resources. We get richer due to the pilgrimage, and they go back. It's not like they can cancel the Hajj or something, right? So the strongest card that they're willing to play here is this man has caused dissensions within the tribe, within the clan, and then within families. Try to make that idea stick That's how much of a disruptor he is. And it's because he's a sorcerer. I want to step back for a moment here and just emphasize again the whole binary that these people were very evil and these people were very, and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the fathers were very good. Of course, we know this. But here you see, these are very thinking people. They're not dumb people. These Abdul Shams and these, they're thinking the arguments through. Now, obviously, we reject these arguments, but this is a well thought out strategy.
Right, but they went through all their options and then they settled on something that they thought would have the highest impact or prevent the most harm to them.
Exactly. And let's keep this in mind. These are the people who are the undisputed guardians of the Kaaba.
Right.
And they have such high stature. They have these things, but now they are worried about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his message, and how his followers have grown.
So they're basically focusing on spin.
Exactly.
Right? It's not about sincerity.
Yeah.
It's about basically spinning something that they think will work with the people that are mainly visiting and going to go.
Exactly.
So they have actually a controlled period in which they need to make sure that they
control the messaging.
The messaging is controlled and it sticks so that when they leave also, they will take that message with them and hopefully that'll help them beyond the confines of the Arabian Peninsula or just Mecca, right? And so exactly. So they really need to sort of undermine the reputation of the Prophet ﷺ and whatever he had done up until then with other people by doing all this.
Exactly, because this is the most significant public relations battle to date since the Prophet got wahi. Because it doesn't just involve his immediate family or his clan or even the Quraysh.
Right.
It involves people who are coming from far reaches of the peninsula and even outside.
And effectively, I mean, what they're trying to do is they're trying to manipulate all these people.
Yeah, well, they have coming up with fabrications to protect their privileged position. Come up with fabrications. Because nowhere in this discussion are they saying, is what Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying true? Is what he's saying accurate? No, that's not part of the discussion. The discussion is, how do we paint him? How do we brand him as a sorcerer? How do we discredit him? That's where their mental energy is going, not on analyzing what he's saying and if it is true.
Why is it important for them to speak in one voice? What's at stake? I mean, arguably, I could see a scenario where the pilgrims are showing up and that as usual they would have different members of Quraysh and the different tribes and clans, taking care of visitors, right? In different sort of configurations and stuff. But they could have at that time, based on those relationships that they had with those visitors, right, said, somebody said he's a magician, somebody said he's a soothsayer, somebody said, I mean, it would have been okay, no?
No, unified messaging is important. Unified messaging always helps you move your goals forward. Even within a company, right? If you have a unified message and you're more likely to hit your targets. So here, this is their risk. In a tribal society, there are people say like Walid ibn Walid, who's actually the son, right? He's Khalid ibn Walid's brother. And he's the son of Abdul Shams. He's uncomfortable with this.
What is he saying?
Because, well, no, you can see, he's uncomfortable with it because, see, a lot of these people, the younger generation, right? Since they were little boys, they've heard Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful, the trustworthy one, of lonely lineage.
Right.
Known very well. His personality, his ethical conduct is known extremely well. Because at this time, the population of Mecca is between about 5,000 to 7,000, right? And this is a family who has been in Mecca. And so this is a key point that even their people, they say, okay, like Walid, you can see even when you watch the clip, he's uncomfortable with this.
Walid ibn Walid.
Walid ibn Walid, yes, the son. Because he becomes a prisoner of war at Badr and then accepts Islam after Badr, shortly thereafter, even before he reaches Mecca. And so there are people, even with al-Nadwah, that know of the Prophet's honesty, that know of his credibility, who are very uncomfortable with this maligning of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Because they realize that you don't really have an argument. You know he's Sadiq al-Amin, but you are still trying to undercut him. And even in that society, public relations is important. Public relations didn't just start with the invention of the TV, right?
Right.
And we have to understand. So this is what I was saying earlier, that these are thinking people. They're smart people. They're misguided, right?
But they're going through their options methodically.
Exactly. They're strategizing. They're going through the options. They say, what do we do in this circumstance? Okay. They haven't heard about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's message. They are going to hear about his message. There are going to be inquiries. So how do we position ourselves, and how do we position the messaging in a way that gives us the highest likelihood of success? Which is what? For them to believe us and to dismiss Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his message.
What does it say? They rejected so many different labels, right? What does it say about how well they knew the Prophet ﷺ himself?
Literally members of the same tribe. They knew the Prophet ﷺ, they knew his family, they knew his lineage, they knew his father, they knew his grandfather, and there's an intimate understanding. The two parties know each other extremely well. It's just not that they know the Prophet ﷺ knows them extremely well.
Right.
And they're faced with a situation which is really, really difficult, or basically impossible.
What is that?
They are trying to take someone whose title was Sadiq al-Amin, the most credible person in their midst, and argue, don't listen to him, and to discredit him.
Great point. And I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, on the basis of that reputation, right? I mean, he said, would you trust me if I told you there's an army behind this mountain? And they said, yes, we would.
Yes, we would.
So again and again, they confirmed that they would trust him, but when it became a threat to them, then, that trust was, I don't even think it was an issue of trust at that point. It was just an issue of you're threatening whatever we have. And so
our privileged position.
Exactly.
Our stature as guardians of the Kaaba, the economic system that we benefit from, right? The trade that goes north to Damascus, the fact that we're a trading center, all of these things, they feel under threat. And so you see, they are smart, they're organized, they decide to have a unified message, and this is how they intend to target the Prophet's character, by saying that he was a sorcerer. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a sorcerer.
I mean, on that sorcerer point, what they settled on, and he divides families. That was their talking point. Why was that so, sort of emotionally effective, right?
Fundamental question. The most important relationship that you have is to, say, your tribe. It's your identity, it's your protection, it's your everything, right? And what they're trying to do here is, what would make a normal person forsake tribe? And yet Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is not saying break off family relations.
Right.
But he's saying that faith is more important than bloodline.
Right.
That's what they're really trying to do. So how do you spin this? How do you pivot this? And I think, this is something important, right? Even in modern times, communities were mislabeled, right? Just not too long ago here, even in the US. It was conventional wisdom that people of certain skin color are intellectually inferior. This was the conventional wisdom only 40 years ago in South Africa.
Sure.
Right? So we have to understand it within that context, right? So here, the lineage, tribe, loyalty to tribe is not just the organizing principle of society, and the governing principle of society, it basically drives everything else. And here, their main motivation is not to search for truth, not to see if what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying is accurate. No, to say, what do we need to do to discredit him so we can still protect our privileged position?
And that discrediting comes in the form of just throwing labels.
Exactly.
Right? And then basically trying to cover up with those labels the truth.
Exactly.
That is already manifesting, that is already drawing people in.
Exactly.
Right? But they just want to put a new label on it so that don't buy this.
Exactly. So this is spin versus being sincere.
Right.
A person should ask, okay, well, should we analyze Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's arguments on its merits?
Right.
Should we just looking to create spin to discredit him?
What the whole effort was. Perception management as an objective to defend privilege, right? Where do you see that happening today? I mean, you highlighted something in a previous discussion where even in what you would call in our community, in Dini circles, perception management dictated how even
Policy and strategy.
yeah, exactly, and how people who actually did quite horrible things, how they were dealt with or not dealt with. It was more about, okay, let's keep the perception of the institution and not let this drag us down and whatnot. So how does that compromise the integrity of people or the institutions themselves?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. You see it here on display. The Quraysh are not saying at any time, let's search for the answer. So perception management is where most people's energy goes, right? And I guess because they say this, perception is reality.
Sure.
It's said in a certain context.
Sure.
But our emphasis should always be on truth. Okay. Make an effort to stand for the truth, right? And consider them to advance your ideas in the marketplace based on truth. Okay. That should be where our effort should be. Okay. And then inshallah, perception will take care of itself. We're not in a day or 3 days, but over a period of time. And I think this is the thing. So in order for them to maintain their privilege, they're threatened by this message. And what do they want to do? They want to manipulate the public.
There's actually something else that occurs to me. It's not just their own public, it's the public that's coming.
The
to see
visitors,
them, right?
the
visitors,
Hajjis.
right. It's interesting to think also about what effect planting the right image in their mind, the right image or the image that they wanted to plant in the mind of the pilgrims, how that might even affect the local residents.
Exactly.
Right. So you're actually using that small episode, the Hajj, as a way to even do your job for you, right? That you might not be able to do very effectively without the visitors.
Yeah.
Another interesting phenomenon to think about.
Yeah.
So in the Quraysh war room, they couldn't agree on what the Prophet ﷺ was or what he was doing, but they all agreed on one thing: he was a threat to their order. We've talked about this before as well. But it wasn't because he was violent or deceitful or magical. Neither him nor his companions. Exactly. In fact, they were taught the exact opposite of that. The problem, the threat to their order, was because what the Prophet ﷺ was doing was making people think and to choose something different from the established order. So they did what people always do when the privilege is exposed. They basically tried to spin a story. So here's the reflection for this session. When truth rises, what story are we spinning to keep things status quo? What story are we spinning so that things stay the same and we don't have to face the truth? We've actually covered it up with a label or some other tactic. Inshallah, join us for the next session. Assad, thank you as usual, when we explore how the Seerah confronts not just false belief but false storytelling as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.